Do you pay for your Zoom subscription?
Yeah.
I still can't figure out why you don't get all the files.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. We're recording.
Well, since as we're recording, we probably should maybe talk.
Well, I was adjusting my fan, so we didn't have fan noise in the background.
You think we should
Of course,
talk?
we should have fan noise in the background. Yay, live recording. We're streaming now. Which remind me, after the show, I need to talk to you about some of that stuff.
All right, are we starting now?
We're starting now. Hey, and no driving gloves tonight. I always say everybody, but am I supposed to be a personal connection to you, the listeners out there? Why don't you give me some feedback on that? Good evening, fellow listener.
He took a deep breath before he said that. It was amazing to see. Watch the video. Get us on YouTube.
This is No Driving Gloves. We've got Sean Yoder with us tonight. Will's filming his TV show, hanging out with Courtney Hanson. And
it's a rough gig, but someone has to do it.
And Derek's got a whole new structure, and we're still working with him to figure out if we have to change recording nights or he's just not here tonight. We'll put it that way. So Sean and I are going to jump in, maybe talk some BS about some things, and we've got a topic. We'll see if we can get to the topic. But Sean, how's things been going for you? It's been a long time since we've actually done a chat type show.
Just us. Yeah, we've had so many amazing guests lately. It has been a while since it's just been us hosts. Yeah, dude, I'm as busy as ever. I know a lot of folks have slowed down with everything that's going on in the world right now, but with what I do on a daily basis and where we're going with Nemesis Lab and the simulation development and all that stuff, things are wide open right now in that arena, and we're doing our best to make the world aware of who we are and what we do and all that good stuff. And, just creating a lot of content revolving around simulation. And some of that has spilled over into No Driving Gloves. And I know from talking with you, John, I know you were like, I don't necessarily understand the cannonballish run videos that you're posting, but they're fun, man. It's just having a good time with a steering wheel and a pedal set. And I'm driving cars. They're just virtual cars. And, just hopping in and driving cross country every once in a while. The game that I'm doing it in is called The Crew 2. And it's a living, breathing 3D world that is a condensed version of the U.S. And that last run I did from it's south of Miami, Florida, up to the Seattle Space Needle. And you can see that that run, and it was like 90 real miles, and it took like 50 minutes. It was amazing. It's just fun.
Yeah, you're talking about the Cannonball Run, and one of the last episodes we've done without a guest was our COVID Cannonball episode, and I was kind of irritated when I was listening to a fellow podcaster, and you can go back and listen to our interview with Matt Farah, and he mentioned he was going to interview Ed Bolian right after us. And sure enough, his episode releases, and what do? They cover every topic and every question we asked in our show. It's almost like Ferris stole our show.
I don't think he did.
Carried it through. I'm going to accuse him.
Are you? That's great. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Matt Farah has the absolute coolest indoor car storage facility I've ever seen in my entire life, and basically told us if the world started to end, that we had an invitation to head that way, and now you've ruined it. So thanks for that. I appreciate that. That's our only chance for survival in the apocalypse was Farah, and you shot it down completely.
I'm guessing we're probably number 23 or 24 on his favorite people in the world list anyway.
And he's only
got 2 parking spots.
I don't think
we weren't going to get parking anyway for this.
I don't want parking. I just want to get into the bomb shelter. I want that portion of it. Or I guess like right in our backyard, there's the basement at a certain museum that we won't talk about just yet. Yeah, if we need a bomb shelter, there's one closer, I think.
Now, I think Ferris is probably even more structurally sound than that, but
I think it really is, man. Like what he was talking about, the way that structure is built, unbelievable.
I'd like to know.
Absolutely
I'd
unbelievable.
like to know how much that building weighs.
3 pounds.
Got to
Three
be.
and a half.
Got.
Three and a half pounds.
It's got to be all of 3.5 pounds.
It's ridiculous.
But
All right, what's the topic tonight, John? Let's dig into this thing.
Yeah,
Let's knock it out of the park.
This is kind of a relevant topic because this episode's coming out on Monday. Just a few days ago, we released our Lane Motor Museum interview. We'd interviewed Jeff Lane a couple of months back, and we agreed we'll hold the episode until normalcy kind of returned to the world, or we were getting back to it, and he knew what was in store for his museum. And his museum, we're recording on Wednesday. His museum opens on Thursday the 11th, so the day tomorrow. In our recording time, 4 days ago and 5 days ago in episode release time. And then USA Today, I don't understand why this poll pops up. And I always like criticizing some of these polls. And I don't know if I don't want to go through it place by place, but they're running a poll for the best attraction for car lovers. And they leave that so wide open. What is the best attraction for car lovers? And they list some very popular museums. They list
most of their selections are museums.
And that's it. That leaves a lot off. I mean, they throw some events on there, but I think it's very, very narrow. I mean, I don't want to be harsh on it. And, some of these, and I'll take Henry Ford's on the list. And Henry Ford's a great car museum, but it's a lot more than a car museum. It is a technology museum. I really wish Derek was here tonight. He used to be a conservator at the Henry Ford, and I talked to them really closely, actually, about following up Derek at his job, looking to be Derek's replacement at the Henry Ford, and I just chose I didn't want to live in Detroit. But they have very few cars in there. It was amazing to me. And when you interview, I went to the car warehouses and saw the back into things. And I don't know if the Henry Ford is a place. I mean, it sounds great, sounds like a car museum, and it is a fascinating place. But I mean, it's loaded with trains and steam engines and assembly methods, and they've got a light bulb production line in there showing you how light bulbs were made, incandescent bulbs, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, whenever they were making incandescent bulbs. So is that a car museum? They throw Barbers on there, and Barbers pushes themselves as a motorcycle museum, and I always push that they've got a collection of over 100 cars, and I think now it's over 130 cars. So they have more cars than a lot of these museums that are on the list, or a lot of car museums. But we're talking out of this list of, what is it, 20 places? We have one.
Predominantly, it's museums. They list
it's over 50% museums, and that's saying that the Shelby Heritage Center is a museum, even though it's presenting Shelby and the history of Shelby. And I don't know if it's really a museum, but it's it's a place you can gather. The Nethercutt collection, it's a museum, but it's a kind of a private collection. The Revs Institute is the former Collier collection, and by appointment only. I don't think they have general admission hours.
I feel like less of a car person because I've never even heard of that before. And I guess that's just it's a higher end thing. I guess I don't know. I literally didn't even know that existed.
It's a very prestigious collection. I mean, they own a full gambit of like Cunninghams and a lot of your 50s era racers, because the Collier brothers raced a lot in the 50s. Miles Collier.
Gotcha.
So
All kinds of
they have a
amusing
lot of that
versions.
stuff. They have, and if you ever ask me what one of the best websites in the world for car people, they have their entire library of photographs is available online, and I don't know what the website address is offhand right now, but you just Google it and find it. You when I was restoring that Lotus Mark 10 at Barber's, we had an idea somewhere that the car was red due to a magazine article or something. It had run one race or so in red, and we were, what red, what, and through the Revs collection or Revs Institute, I actually found 2 pictures of that exact car racing. And then through a colorization program we ran it through, we were able to kind of deduce the red that we wanted to go with. And it's, it's just a fascinating collection of thousands upon thousands of photos. I really, hats off to the guy that put
Oh
that all
wow.
together.
I just found it. It's revsinstitute.org. revsinstitute.org is the website. And goodness gracious, man, I'm gonna have to dig into this. They have race history broken down into endurance, Grand Prix, IMSA GT, IndyCar, Rally, and Road Race. And just some of the slideshow. Good Lord, let me put this. Are we get in trouble if yeah, I'm just gonna put it up here. I'm just gonna do it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it whether they want me to or not. That's what's happening. No, I'm not, because John hasn't given me permission to share my screen. I'm not doing it. Yeah, but it's
you should
Revs
have permission
Institute.
to share. Let me see here.
It wouldn't let me do it. It's laughing at me.
One participant may share screen at the same time.
Yep, host disabled, participant screen sharing. This makes for compelling podcasting. This is amazing.
Well, we're podcasting. We're podcasting, not YouTubing.
That's very true.
I don't.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Yeah, I think it's working now. Let's see here. There.
Yeah, now we got it. The Revs Digital Library. We need to get somebody from the Revs. We need to get somebody from the Revs Institute on here, because
this is amazing.
Fascinating.
This is absolutely amazing, dude. Like, it's. Let's just click endurance and see what we have here. Oh my God! So it just starts with individuals and goes.
Oh, there's Andy Pilgrim, who's been on the show before.
Andy Pilgrim poses next to car number 18, Pontiac Firebird. All right.
And so you can purchase these images, or get copies of them. It's a wonderful research tool there.
That's crazy.
So I guess poor podcast listeners in your car, when you get home, you need to pop over to the YouTube page, or just go to the Revs Institute yourself. And
yeah, definitely take a look at it, because this is. I feel bad not knowing that it existed until right now, but
let's go to that question, because I criticized Henry Ford for having a lot of non-car stuff and educational stuff. Would that move the Revs up on your list, say here? I don't know where it fell on your list of favorite automotive attractions, but with this background and what they're providing, now you're seeing that he owns a couple of Porsches.
Now that I know it's now that I know it's a motorsport, more of a motorsport focused collection, and seeing the scope of it, yeah, I'd love to go check it out, especially if that little Fiat happens to be on display. I'm all for a little Abarth love. No, it looks amazing. It looks amazing, and I'm kind of blown away that. I mean, I've lived in the automotive world for my entire life, and I had literally never heard of this place until tonight, John.
Yeah, they do a wonderful program every 2 years, and I was slated to go on it until I left Barber's, and I can't afford it. It's like $5,000 or $10,000, and you go for 3 or 4 days, and you spend 3 or 4 days with these museum curators and writers and multimillionaire collectors, and discuss, restoration and preservation and all this wonderful stuff about cars. And that's what Revs is designed to do is, I guess display the history of the car the way it is, unfiltered, unchanged. They're one of the biggest advocates of, and one of the things I say is that, a car's an object. It's a piece of art, but you need to use it because that's a piece of art that was designed to be run and driven. And for that art to fully display itself, it needs to make noise. It needs to be dirty. It needs to be squealing tires. It needs to be out there. A Van Gogh is meant to be hung on the wall and gazed at. The first car up here, the 69 Porsche 908 02, that car is meant to run and drive. And Revs actually runs these things and races these things. And it's just okay, we've spent a lot of time on the Revs.
Yeah, I mean, I could dive deep into this, man. I mean, this is epic. I'll shut it down, but I'm not going to close the window because I really want to go. Oh my God, they've got a 9083. Hi, how are you? That's beautiful right there.
I'm going to say, now that we've talked about the Revs and lot of it, and you're impressed with kind of the background and that comes.
I'm blown away, man.
The historic Grand Prix circuit at Watkins Glen, New York. I've been there. It's an interesting thing. You go to the Seneca Lodge. You go to the Motor Inn or something like that, or the team owner stayed at this Motor Inn, and all the mechanics and drivers and that stayed at the Seneca Lodge. And, I was there with Bob Dance, who was there back in the day with Colin Chapman, and he was Jimmy Clark's chief mechanic and a mechanic for Lotus for many years. So he knew these stories, and it was just great to sit there and listen to them, tell the stories and, everything. It was a day before credit cards and, I really think it's called the Motor Inn. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, where all the owners stayed. The guy was telling us in the 60s, have $100,000 in cash in the safe from all the team owners coming and giving him cash that was supposed to, support the team and pay for all their needs. We went to a winery that's owned by a guy that used to wrench for Team Lotus on the Formula One team, because it wasn't like today where you travel with a Formula One team and 80 mechanics come with you. It was usually the driver, chief mechanic, maybe one more mechanic, and possibly the team owner. And then they got all their mechanics to work on the cars at the local, local shops and things. It was just cheaper. It was a different day, different world. That was long before the days of 1.5 second pit stops. But, so I guess maybe that brings the historic Grand Prix circuit up at Watkins Glen more on the list, because the real circuit basically doesn't exist anymore. But
I've raced and done events at Watkins, and I've been there as a fan as well. And don't get me wrong, it's cool. It's cool, and it's definitely something worth seeing. But there are places that I would recommend you go before I'd recommend you going to Watkins Glen. But
now, see, you've got it back. You've got it, and I see the website you have up on the YouTube channel here, Watkins Glen International. That's not the historic Grand Prix circuit at Watkins Glen. You're looking at the racetrack. The historic Grand Prix circuit is a portion of that racetrack and is a portion of the country roads, and as actually country roads that you would go through.
Yeah, I don't even I've been up there, and I know that part of the history, but
yeah, see, I know
that's what you're looking for right there.
Yeah, that's more of what we're looking for. And a guy I'm really trying to get on the podcast, but he's a little afraid of technology, Ed Kovalchuk. He's on the board of the Watkins Glen. He goes up there all the time. His buddy Dan travels with Ed. Ed's a writer for a lot of magazines and does some other consulting work. But Dan travels with him and does photography work and that for his magazine articles. Be fascinating to get Ed on to talk about some of the motor racing history he knows, and just the names and places he's had. So, all of these things on this list are very well qualified. I've been to a lot of them. I haven't been to all of them. I think the same thing with, you know, Sean. We'll jump down to Simeon Museum. Great, great place. Is it the best place for car lovers? You've never been to the Simeon. Fascinating cars.
I've been there.
He's got the Cobra Daytona. He's got Porsche 917s. He's got a lot of fancy, nice, cool cars. And Dr. Simeon bought them all when they were cheap cars. That's why he has this collection. He didn't go out and buy all this and amass this collection in the last 10 years. He's bought them over his entire life. And a very prim and proper kind of guy. They exercise their cars. They do demonstrations once a month with various cars in their parking lot when everything's open and running right. But what really got me is you have all these wonderful cars and they're in a non-air conditioned building. Now, granted, it's Philadelphia's, but I assume the building's heated. I was there late summer. But you still have a lot of environmental temperature swings in that. I don't think it's the best place for the cars. And it's not, to me, an inviting place. It's well decorated with some dioramas in that along the walls and where the cars are displayed. But what do you think of it, Sean? I've dominated a lot of this conversation.
I mean, the one thing that was in there that I would still be standing there staring at it had I not, had to actually come home and actually love my wife. They do have a 917 hippie car. It's one of the number 3 hippie cars, and that's what captivated me. The rest of the museum, there was some cool stuff, but like you said, it doesn't tell a story like a lot of the museums are, the other museums that you can go to. Like it was more of this guy's got a really big garage and he's got some amazing cars, and let's let the general public come in and check them out in the garage kind of thing. That's the vibe I got from it, which is great. It's fine. It is worth seeing if you're in the area, but I don't necessarily know that, and this is going to make the Simeon people mad. I don't see it as a destination. I see it as if you happen to be up there, check it out.
Yeah,
if you're a car person.
When I lived in Washington, D.C., it was on my list of, when I get up to Philadelphia, but there were a lot of things that were on my list. And go see Falling Water. I'm going to go see this. I'm going to go see that. And then next thing you know, you live in Alabama and all this stuff is now 15 hours away instead of 2. And the only reason I've been to the Simeon is I swung by on the way to a Lotus event in Princeton, New Jersey. I believe that's where we're going. We might have been going to Watkins Glen, but I think it was Princeton, New Jersey I was on my way to. And we, swung in, visited the Simeon and that there. I would honestly say I would be upset if I made it a destination. Then I'm going to go in and expect something like I would see at the Peterson or the National Corvette Museum or, a lot of these other places on here. I guess if you really want to think, I really don't even know what to compare it to. I'd say the basement at the Peterson, but that's still climate controlled and I guess as clean. There's just nothing on this list that I would say could even compare to the Simeon. It's just an interesting thing in its own. Maybe the closest is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum it's been there a long time. The building itself is part of the track's history to a certain extent, and I mean, there's some cool dioramas. There's some epic racing history in there. There's no denying that. But the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, it's okay. I found I was at a Penske dealership in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they had a Penske museum inside that row of dealers. I thought that was cooler than the Indy Museum.
The Indy Museum kind of let me down. It's a basic tile floor. The funny thing I'm noticing about this photo they have to, explore and vote, whatever, on USA Today, is the primary car in it is the Lotus 69 that belongs to the Barber Museum. The Barber Museum lent them a car, and they lent the Barber Museum a car for a major portion of last year. And it's just kind of funny that the prominent car in the picture isn't even the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's museum's car. But it's a cool car. But
It's a cool car. It's a cool car, and it's part of the history of the track. So I get that. And the thing about going to Indy is obviously to get to the museum, you have to go inside the track, which is, if you're a race fan, that's special. Just being on the grounds at that speedway, you feel it, and that's cool. That part of it is definitely cool, and but I see Indy as more of a destination. Obviously, even if you're just going there to run a couple laps at one of the track programs that they have, and then go to the museum and then soak in the history, that's more of a destination to me than the Simeon is.
I'll agree with you there. I've only been to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum when I'm going to an event at Indy, whether I'm going, when I grew up in Illinois, it's just a couple hours away and things like that. If I was going to the Indy 500, most of the trips you'd swing by the museum. I went to every Formula One race at Indianapolis that they had in this time around. And while you didn't go into the museum every time you did, when you go during an event, you're bound to bump into interesting drivers and historic drivers. And I'm not saying you're going to go in and bump into Jeff Gordon and Rick Mears and things like that, but you're going to bump into some people with really fascinating stories. And one of my best stories about IMS Museum is my family and my dad we were going through photographs on the second floor of the museum, and you can buy copies of these photographs. And we found this one from '82 of this Indy car flipping through the air and this guy's feet dangling out of the front of him. It's a really famous photo. And it's a driver named Stan Fox had an accident, and we were commenting on it, and I wonder if the guy lived. And this guy came up and tapped my dad on the shoulder and said, yeah, he survived. And what do you know about the accident? And the guy goes, I'm Stan Fox. I know a lot about it. I was there.
Yeah, I'm that guy.
So I think if you're going to go, I don't think it's really a destination. If you're going to Indianapolis to see Indianapolis, and Indianapolis is a fascinating town. It's one of the towns I'd love to live in. Go during a race weekend. Whether it's the Brickyard 400, whether it's the Indy 500, whether they do some motorcycle racing there now, I believe. They've got a lot more things going on than when I was in my teens, and it was the Indy 500, and that was the only race, the only thing that ever took place there. It's just a great museum. And the other great story I remember about the Formula One races, and I don't know who owns it. I almost bet it would have been Tony George's, but it'd still be an odd spot for him to have it. Every year during the Formula One race, there was a Ferrari F40 parked in the parking lot of the museum, and that wasn't open to the general public for parking during the race. You had to have an infield pass or whatever. And it was this F40, and you look in it, and it had McDonald's wrappers on the floor and Coke cans, and the guy drove it and used it like I do a Civic. And it's just refreshing to me to see somebody driving their Ferrari like a car and not like a, pristine, let's be careful with it thing.
Yeah, drive the thing, man. Definitely. I totally get that. And I'm actually looking at Indy's website right now. Second Saturday of every month, they have a Cars and Coffee at the Speedway. There's all kinds of smaller events and tech talks and, just deep dives with, like, Johnny Rutherford was one of the guests at one of their recent tech talks. And I'm seeing here on their page, Indianapolis 500 practice, August 12th. It's my birthday. So if anyone wants to send me up to Indy on Wednesday, August 12th to watch Indianapolis 500 practice, $15 ticket. What do you got to lose? Just be nice. I'll
that's
take that for my
about a
birthday.
10-hour trip in a car. You could buzz up there, $15 and
right. So I mean, it's damn near worth it just to go up and hang out for the day and check it out. I mean, that's who wants to road trip. You want a road trip?
Wondering what I'm doing August 15th.
You want a road trip? Yeah, there's cool stuff going on there year round, and the Indy area. I've been fortunate enough to do some work up there with some of the IndyCar teams actually, and um, if you are a motorsport fan, the Indianapolis area, like every night of the week, there's well, not every, almost every night of the week, there's something racing somewhere. Like there's the sprint cars and just the smaller ovals that they have around that area. They're really active and they race constantly. And as we start to come into whatever the new normal is, um, those tracks will be firing back up. And if you went up there midweek, chances are within an hour and a half radius, there's probably 2 or 3 choices for going to other racetracks while you're there. It's just an amazing place, and it's one of the few places left in the United States. It might actually be the only area left in the United States where you can really, really make a living driving late models and sprint cars and truly like at levels below IMSA, NASCAR, things of that nature. Like you can literally get in there and make a living running USAC or make a living running another, Lucas Oil Series or something along those lines. But you could drive 4 or 5 nights a week if you wanted to as a race driver up there. It's crazy.
Why do you think Tony Stewart retired in
Yeah,
Indiana? I
yeah,
mean,
totally.
he grew up there, but he retired there. And of course, Jeff Gordon was from, I believe, Indianapolis, wasn't he? Or was he Indianapolis and
He's
then
California
California or something?
He's a California dude. Yeah.
Okay, but yeah.
I mean, but he spent a lot of time there because he's a sprint car guy. It's a cool place. If you're a race person, the Indy area and the surrounding areas are just, they're so active, man, so active, and always something going on. It's kind of like Nashville with music. Every night of the week, there's something racing somewhere. Go check it out, kind of thing.
Segue us somewhere else. Where are we going to go visit now?
I have actually been to let's see here, the America's Car Museum. I've been there. Got to go there as we were on one of those cross country tours with SRT, and that place is cool, man. It's another one of the ones on the list though that I don't see as a destination. But if you happen to be in the Seattle or Tacoma area, check it out. Even if you don't dig cars, that place architecture wise, what the heck happened? Architecture. I don't know where I went there. That place architecturally is stunning. It's very, very modern, very, very modern. It's just a giant hangar basically with a really cool shape, and the collection inside it I thought was cool. I thought was really cool, but again, not a destination for me. And the same thing could be said for, where is it at? I'm going to find it.
No. I've got a comment on
Okay,
American Car Museum.
Okay, go there.
And it's not a place that I've been. It's a place that I know a lot about in the background. I was at Barber's. There was a lot of discussion because it was being built while I was at Barber's. But even oddly enough, the restoration firm it's not restoration, the appraisal firm that I had originally started my first business with, Pristinio LLC, was my business. And they were contracted. Actually, they were contracted for 2 different places on this list, but they were contracted to go out and appraise the Harold LeMay collection. And that's where the inventory of America's Car Museum, the bulk of it is from, is there is a small LeMay museum, but this is where the bulk of the LeMay collection went. When Harold passed away, what was that, 2002, 2003, I think, he owned what was known as the largest collection of cars. He had the largest car collection in the world, roughly 3,300 cars. And our restoration or our appraisal firm was contracted to go out and appraise for the IRS and tax purposes every single car in the collection. And it was just Harold's filing system is he just shoved titles in garbage bags until garbage bags were full. And then he threw them in a closet, and he started with another garbage bag. And you'd go through, and I didn't go do any of the hands-on stuff, but our appraisers go up there, I guess, and pull titles out. And then the job was, pull 10 titles out, then go find the 10 cars, because he would have, he would
Wow.
have some in buildings, and then he had buildings the family didn't admitted they didn't even know he had built the building because it was hidden between buildings and had cars.
Wow.
He would have people come up to him and hey, I need your 57 Thunderbird for a parade. Is that okay? Yeah, go get it. And he'd tell them where it is, and they give him the keys, and they'd go get the car. They just never got around to bringing it back.
Really?
Harold never knew, because he had so many
He just
cars
didn't know where they were.
you couldn't keep track of them. He didn't care because somebody was enjoying his car.
Oh my
And
God, that's
I don't know if
this is part of the collection right there. That's
he was known for driving to Hershey. He would drive. He was this multimillionaire, made his money from nothing. He owned a garbage truck company, or a garbage company in the Tacoma area, and became one of the largest garbage companies in the Northwest. And that's how he started the collection. He would find cars in back alleys and go up to people and knock on their doors and, hey, you got this car, what would you want for it? And buy them dirt cheap, or just haul them away because the people didn't want them. And that's how the collection started. Not everything in his collection was pristine, but I've got a binder with every single car in his collection when he died. Some of the collection's been sold off. Some, they've funded the museum a little bit. It's nonprofit. That's how you do it. But Harold was just a fascinating man. And I think this is a really good tribute to him and what his collection was. And there's a lot of backstories and a lot of interesting stories to do with him and his widow and family and America's Car Museum.
yeah, architecturally, man, I found it amazing architecturally. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Like the building is very, very unique. And we're showing a picture of one of the ends of the building on the interior on the main floor right now on the YouTube feed, and it's just beautiful. Like I could live in there, man. I feel the same way about Barber. I just love the architecture. I love it when unique architecture wraps around the mechanical things that we really, really love. It's just cool. We pulled up in front of that museum. We weren't even scheduled to be there that day. We pulled up in front of the museum, and all of us just kind of looked at each other and went, I think we had like 4 or 5 hours left in the drive that we were making to get to the next scheduled event that we were supposed to do. And all of us just looked at each other and went, yep, we're going to go in. It's like, we're going to go in. We're going to go in. We're going to take some time. We're going to look around because it's too cool not to.
Yeah, you can't pass it up if you're in the area, because I'll be honest, I'm never going to get on a plane and fly to Tacoma to go to, America's Car Museum. I'm
Right.
never going to get on a plane and fly to Philadelphia to see the Simeon. And if any of our listeners ever kid themselves and you're driving, down I-95 in Pennsylvania, and you go, oh, I'll catch that on my next trip through. Just think of it. There's never another next trip through. Something will happen. And it's something I've learned, like I said earlier, the hard way, that I had all this stuff right at my fingertips, and I'll just get to it next weekend. I'll get to it next weekend. And you know what I did that weekend? I watched cable television. I should have went in again. It's that experience life thing. And hey,
yeah, we did that when we were traveling cross country. We literally made a pact between the four of us that were on those trips. If there was something cool that we wanted to see, didn't matter what it was. As long as we weren't on a deadline, like as long as it wasn't, we have an hour to get to this event that, there's going to be 20,000 people at or something like that. But, if we had an open day and we were traveling along, like we went to the Pez factory and we went and saw the first Pony Express, like it was a Pony Express building basically, but it was the first Pony Express. It was the central distribution point for the Pony Express basically. And we saw that landmark and saw that building and just things like that. If you're traveling cross country and there happens to be something cool in that area, go check it out. It's worth it. It's totally worth it.
I'm slowly teaching myself. The goal isn't to always go from point A to point B. It's to see the rest of the alphabet. You go from point A to point Z, and there's 24 things you should stop and see. We talked in the Lane episode about the Futura homes, which are the fiberglass UFO homes.
Yeah.
And for years, for absolute years, I drove by one all the time on I-55 in Illinois on my way to St. Louis, going from Peoria to St. Louis. Never stop. It's antique shop. They've got these big fiberglass things, the Futura home out front. Never, ever stopped. I finally stopped probably the first time 5 years ago and absolutely love the antique mall that's there. It's a cool home. It's on the registry of the, I think, 56 Futura homes that still exist. It's just a shell. It's not a complete home like most of them are. But it's one of those things. And it's just down the street from Country Classic Cars, which is the dealership that burned down and then they rebuilt and then a tornado came through or vice versa. And they always have a ton of tremendous, interesting cars to buy, usually a couple hundred cars.
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is if you're within 20 miles of the world's largest ball of twine, go see the world's largest ball of twine. Just go check it out.
Like the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum, Auburn, Indiana. Farther down, we've got a Mecum auction as one of the suggested places. I went to a Mecum auction, and within miles of the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Museum, didn't go. I've never been there. My aunt and uncle live in South Bend, Indiana. They've lived there 30 years, 35 years. My uncle was an executive of Notre Dame. I could have went up any time. I have free lodging. My aunt sends me news clippings for the ACD Museum. One of my friends here locally sits on the board of the ACD Museum. Do I take advantage of any of that? No. I sit here and, I'm probably going to end up dying without ever going to this place. Or by the time I go, I'm going to have to end up making a special trip, paying lodging. It's ridiculous that, I've never been there. I can't tell you anything about it. So I would make an uneducated guess if I voted against it on this list.
Of all the things that are on the list, I mean, there are some things that are glaring omissions, like just glaring omissions. It's really weird to me that they have the Gilmore Museum, which is cool, but I don't understand why it's on this list. I've actually been involved with several events at the Gilmore over the year. Cool place. Not sure why it's here.
I'm going to kick myself there. When I took my job at Barber's, I was also interviewing with the Gilmore and been up there, seen the place. It's a cool place. It's really cool. It's an immersive experience. It's like I said to you, it's like, is it Greenwich Village, Greenwood Village next door to the Henry Ford. It's this, they have all these period buildings and cars and it's
walking from building to building in the old gas station and all. It's cool.
It's really a really neat experience, but is it really a car guy experience? I mean, it's good for a family to go. It'll keep the wife entertained, the kids entertained, and there's some cars for dad, or it'll keep the husband entertained, it'll keep the kids entertained, and there's some cars for mom. However, your family.
It's basically it's a car museum with fairgrounds.
If you're going to have that on this list, you need to have the Volo Auto Museum on this list. Have you ever been to Volo? It's just outside of Chicago. They are known for their celebrity cars. Right now, they actually have the official #1 Miami Vice Ferrari, quote, Daytona, and on display. They have hundreds of cars. It's also attached to an antique mall. It's also attached to a mini golf course. And like I said, they have a ton of celebrity cars.
It's Ripley's Believe It or Not for cars.
They have a ton of, say a Camaro Z28 and a Firebird and a Charger and all these cars. Most of them are for sale. if you want to go home, I think with the Miami Vice Ferrari, you could, if you wanted to step up, it's got a for sale sign on it. It's an interesting place. It's a museum where you can actually buy the displays, but it's a tourist trap, cool little place. Disclaimer: my stepfather actually bought his '65 Mustang from Volo, had
Nice.
it for a while, and pretty good car. 65 Mustang had some little work to do to it, but nothing more than you would if you would buy it from any other classic car dealer. But that should be on this list. I'm going to take it from Sean and say we have Meekum on here. We have Barrett Jackson. I have said for years, Barrett Jackson is the absolute best place in the world to go if you're a car person.
It's a car show. It's totally a car show.
I don't know if it's $100 to get into Barrett Jackson now.
I've never paid. I've always been there working, so I've never paid to get in.
I've always, when I was there as interning and stuff like that, and it's, everything's expensive, but everything is car related. Everything in the buildings, everything outside. Now, yes, you can go buy a jet helicopter and you can buy there's a Gulfstream booth and there's other stuff like that, but they're cool rich people toys or they're cool car guy toys. And there's something there for every budget, at least,
you can get into Barrett for the same price that you can get into Disney for the day. And it's Disney for car people. It totally is. And just walking through the lots for sale at a Barrett or a Meekum or a Russo and Steel, any of those, it's the coolest cars and coffee that you've ever been to, and it goes on for days.
Yeah,
it's epic.
Now, if there's ever an auction in your town or near you that you can get into, and if you have got to buy a $50 catalog, you have a picture of everything you're going to see that way and a description of everything you're going to see, and sometimes even an appropriate value. But it usually gets two people in, and you can peruse and see this cool stuff that it's unfortunate, but a lot of these cool cars only change hands between collectors. They're never on display. They go garage to garage. They might get driven one Saturday a year, but it's, an auction is, I saw, when we had Brett Hatfield on, it was before your day, Sean, we interviewed him, and the first article he ever put on his Read the Driven blog was on this Scaglielli Corvettes or something like that. And there's only 3 of them in the world. And I got to drive one at Barrett Jackson. Where are you going to see one? I've never seen one ever since.
Right.
It's
crazy what you can see at those places. And then when you say, if there's an auto auction near you, we don't mean like a Mannheim or an Odessa. That's a whole other show. We'll get into that on a whole other show. But and there are cool things to be seen there too, if you are so inclined. But like a Barrett or a Russo or a Meekum, it is a car show. It's a car show of epic proportions, and it's literally typically every era and everything from Concours restorations to properly patinaed, survivor cars to hot rods, G machines, pro touring. What do you want? What do you want and what do you want to pay? And there are, if you go to a Barrett Jackson, let's back it up and say, if you do go to a Barrett Jackson and you're not going there as an amusement park, just to look around, you're going there with the idea of maybe buying something, go on the first 2 days. And you might be able to find something that's not crazy expensive.
Yeah, go back to one of our late January, early February shows, and we talked about auctions, and Sean kind of went crazy. They were literally giving stuff away.
Yeah, they really were.
First day of Barrett Jackson this year. They had one Pro Runner truck there that they sold for less than what the wheels would have cost.
Yeah, it was a pre-runner truck. It was a pre-runner F-150, like a 96 F-150. It was the Triton body style when they'd first gone to the new rounded body style on the F-150s that had been completely pre-runnered, and it sold for like $16,000. It had $16,000 worth of shocks on it. And I was just like, oh my God, I would give you a kidney for that.
And you can get up, and some of these you can actually touch. I'm not saying go and touch, but I mean, you can get close enough and you can crawl around and get some pretty good detail when you go to any of these auctions. So, on this list between Meekum and Vera Jackson, it's just a matter of what kind of cars do you like. Do you like
Yeah,
resto rods,
totally.
or do you like kind of original, affordable muscle cars? I mean, we've hopped around a lot on the list. I mean, of course, Mullen's here, the Nethercutt's here, the Petersons. Peterson's never not going to be on a.
Yeah, how could it not
Yeah.
be?
We'll
It's
mention. We'll give Derek a props and say the National Corvette Museum's on here. Again,
the National Corvette Museum. Let's give him even more prop. It's actually leading the votes right now.
yeah.
And it's a cool facility. That is more of a destination than a lot of the other stuff that's on.
See, I was going to say I don't think unless you are a Corvette fan, the Corvette Museum is not a destination. It's very, very convenient to get off the interstate and see.
Yeah.
But it's, unless you're a Corvette guy, I mean, it tells a great story about Corvettes. Since Derek's there, they've done a lot more exhibits trying to educate people beyond the Corvette and, how the Corvette has actually influenced cars. A lot of props to Derek for that. That's the other museum that the appraisal company that I used to work with was involved with. They actually did the appraisal on the sinkhole Corvettes.
Oh, wow.
And they have the Corvette Museum, and I'll give props, and this was before Derek's day at the museum, but I believe he consulted when he was at the Crawford. I believe he consulted with the National Corvette Museum on the restoration and how to preserve what should be done with the Corvettes. And then they have a wonderful display explaining why the sinkhole occurred and answers a lot of those questions, because it's a question that's going to be asked till the day the Corvette Museum closes, which will probably be long after I'm dead.
The fact that they turned that into part of the museum is pretty amazing.
They embrace that piece of history rather than trying to forget it. And they restored, I wish Derek was here, but 3 or 4 of the 6 cars, and a couple of the cars are being displayed in their crushed state. None of the cars were scrapped, but they're that's part of the life of the car. It fell into a sinkhole, and it's not a drivable Corvette anymore, but that's part of the life of that car. And I really commend them. And one of the reasons Derek's on the podcast is because he has a lot of that similar thinking to me, and really, really deeply cares for some of the artifacts. You ever been to the Museum of American Speed in Lincoln, Nebraska? I don't even think I've ever been to Lincoln, Nebraska.
No, we drove through Nebraska, but we just grazed a corner of it when we were on those trips.
I was born in Omaha, but and I'm a Nebraska Cornhusker fan, football-wise. Osborne days. Surprise football trivia from John.
I don't even know what to say. I got nothing. I'm not the guy that can rebut that, or I have nothing to add to that conversation.
I know nothing about the Museum of American Speed. And I think we touched Fountainhead Antique Auto Museum in Fairbanks, Alaska. I have to check with my mom.
Right.
She goes to Alaska. I don't know. Maybe she's been there. A little bit out of the way. I'm probably going to have to click through their website and see what they've got. It's just interesting place. BMW Performance Center in South Carolina.
I mean, I've been there and I've done one of their one-day programs, and it's cool. And the BMW plant it's the Performance Center, the actual Greer, South Carolina plant, and a BMW museum is all on the same property. Do not go through Spartanburg, Greer on a weekend and think that you can go to the museum, because you can't. It's closed. You can only go there when the plant's open, which I think is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my entire life. But it's the way they've run the thing since it opened. It is worth it if you're going through that area, or if you're in that area on a weekday and you have some time. It's worth it to go to the museum. And if you know you're going to be there, schedule a plant tour, because I went on a plant tour. I just got lucky. I walked in and I was like, any chance there's any room left on a tour in the next hour or two? And she's like, there's one going right now. There's 2 spots. Do you want it? I was like, yep. It's free. And you get to walk through and you get to look at the production line, and it's epic. Like if you like robots and sparks and all that, just building amazing thing. It's cool, really cool.
I
I'd
look
rather
at it.
that be on here than the performance center. I thought it was amazing.
I I I'm taking the BMW Performance Center as the National Corvette Museum for BMW fans.
Yeah, basically.
I've
Yeah, it
never been
totally
there
is.
because when I think you can now do a factory tour of the depending on COVID. You can now tour the assembly line again with the Corvettes. There is a racetrack with some driver education programs available, but uh, I, I I don't know if it's the greatest. I'm not the biggest BMW fan. I think I've said that before. It's why we
What
call
they're
it no
doing with
driving gloves.
the 4 Series right now. Good Lord, have you seen that new grill?
Uh,
Oh my God. Mama said if you don't have anything good to say, I just woo. But
I
yeah,
think
it's totally this. It's in the same vein as,
yeah,
the performance center is, and if they're gonna have that on there, then why don't they have the Porsche Experience Centers just
yeah.
outside of the Atlanta airport and the one in LA? Those things are amazing as
Now,
well.
I was going to ask you about that and make that. That was my initial comparison, but they don't have the factory there, so you can
No,
do
they
that.
don't.
But and I'm friends on LinkedIn with the director of the Porsche Experience Center. You probably are too, Sean. Need to get him on the podcast too. I'd
Who's
love to.
running it
Huh?
now? Or can you say on air who's running it
I,
now? I
I'm
don't.
I'm not going to say on air.
Okay,
We'll talk
okay.
about it afterwards.
I probably know.
And
At least I should know.
the only thing left here is the Antique Automobile Club of America, the AACA Museum in Hershey, Pennsylvania. If you're going to put a lot of the stuff on here, one of my questions was, why don't we have the Woodward Dream Cruise? Why don't we have any of the Carlisle events?
Where's Amelia?
Yeah, Amelia Island,
Pebble,
Monterey. Those
Monterey
are
Storks.
ultimate car destinations. Uh, the AACA Museum, interesting place, probably falls more in line with the Henry Ford, well, the Gilmore. I'm guessing probably Auburn Duesenberg Museum tells a very good story, rotating displays. Uh, they actually, we came in and did trying to think, could we come in and do? Either way, there was a big Lotus display. I know when I was at the museum, we lent them a couple cars. They billed it as the largest collection of Lotus ever displayed indoors, forgetting that the Barber Museum, who was lending them cars, had 60 of them and they had like 30. But hey, little details that get overlooked. The AACA Museum, very, very good history. Again, if you're in the neighborhood, and unfortunately to be in the neighborhood of Hershey, Pennsylvania, you're going to Hershey. I mean, there's nothing there. To keep us entertained when we were there for the events for the AACA Museum, we actually had to go to a brew pub. We did go to Hershey's and get a tour and the gift shop and things like that.
Get a Reese's milkshake
But
because
there's
that's epic.
not. It's like having a Beverly Cola at Coca-Cola.
So good.
So, that's the AACA Museum, and I'll leave Barbers to the last. And I'm gonna say, yeah, wonderful car collection, 60 plus Lotus, 120 cars. Sean, what's the problem with the car collection at the Barber Museum?
It's narrow in scope. I mean, you either like Lotus or you probably won't care that much about it.
Well, that's like going to the Corvette Museum.
Yeah,
BMW
yeah.
place.
I mean, I
What
as
what
far as
I
the,
what I
I'm
see,
not sure where you're going with that. I don't see. I
I'm
love the
going
way
to
it's played.
when we talked about traveling for work and taking advantage of things that are there. My last day on the job at the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, I decided I needed to go down and visit Barbers, or maybe I went and visited Barbers. Yeah, I went down and visited Barbers on my last weekend there, and so taking advantage while I was here because I love Lotus and ended up touring the place, and that's what instigated me sending them a resume and that. But I walked in and said, "Where are the Lotus?" And they told me, go in, turn to the right, where the cars still are now. And I walked in and I looked down to the basement, and there was polished aluminum 11. I wanted to see the 11. And I went to the front desk and I said, how do I get down there? And you can't go down there. What? You can't go down there. Give me my money back. And I wasn't in the museum more than 5 minutes. I couldn't go down to the basement. The problem I see with the Barber Museum, half the car collection, unless you go on a race weekend, is not available to be seen up close. It's all gaze down. And that's, that's a problem. I know why it's there. You and I know why the situation exists. But if you're going to be on a list and you're going to vote for great car experiences, there's motorcycles everywhere. Surtees Ferrari, Dan Gurney Lotus, wonderful Lotus collection of 9,000 Lotus models, and that is something to be seen in itself. I'm not knocking the Barber Museum. I used to say this when I worked there. We used to beg for it because I work down in that basement where the cars are, and that's where the restoration shops are. And that's why you can't go to the basement, because the restoration shops are there and it's an insurance liability. There are ways to fix it. They just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should open the cube around the elevator up where the cars are displayed. There are ways to do that, and then still have the privacy for the restoration shops. I totally see that. But I mean, you can still see all of it. You just can't get as close to it as you can. And the Lotus collection, though, I mean, you can literally get like right up on it. Don't touch it. Don't sit in it. Even if you're done with going around. Here's the thing. If you go to a museum and it's the end of the day and you know you're going to leave, just because you know you're going to leave, that's not the time to open a door or throw your leg into the tub of a car and sit down in it just because you don't care whether you get kicked out then. Don't do that. Don't be that person. And it happens. Totally happens.
It's always nice about the museums that have interactive experiences. And for some reason, I thought the Lane was on this list when I first looked at it. But he's got a couple of cars that the general public are allowed to get in and crawl around and take photos with. The Harley Museum, as you go through the Harley Museum, it's kind of an IKEA, and you've got to go through in a set way. But at the end, they have some motorcycles you get to sit on and do a simulated ride. So you get that, and it curves that notion. I don't know how many of these places actually do that. And you're right. You can get right up on a lot of the Lotus. I don't think you can sit in a lot of them now because Mr. Barber has a very creative imagination, and he's got cars suspended and hung off and cantilevered. And those were a lot of the cars that were guilty of being sat in. And they have some, don't get me wrong, they've got some fabulous cars. They've got a 918 Porsche. They've got 4 Lotus 11s. One is the Gullwing, I want to say de Havilland oil car, and it's a pretty car, nightmare to sit in. Don't try it. Take it from me.
Well, that's the other side of this is if you're a big dude, you're not going to fit in any of the Lotus anyway. It's not going to matter.
And one of the cool things, and it's interesting, and if you're not, not really a Lotus guy, but you're still going to see cars in that. One of their most recent donations was the Beatles Bentley, which is you'll see, Google Beatles Bentley. There's a website on it. It's a tie-dye painted Bentley that was used by the Beatles. Just a very odd thing to be seen in the collection. I don't know if it was a donation or a purchase, or sometimes Mr. Barber gets a little odd there. I know, the collection's always expanding. I haven't been in the building for probably 6 months to see what's been added, but I'm not knocking it. I'm just telling you like it is, and probably one of the reasons we agreed to part ways is that I was a little, I'm very, why the podcast is called No Driving Gloves. I don't hold back anything, even when I should.
Do you want to wrap this up by going or listing the one vehicular attraction that you would go see?
You mean the one that I'm going to click and vote for?
The one that you're going to either click and vote for, or the one that's not on the list that you would that you view as the pinnacle, the premier automotive attraction and I'm just going to say on the planet. Don't limit it to the states, unless
No,
it's in. I mean, if it's in the states for you, then great.
I've got a limit to the states. I think I'm going to make you, because I know where you're going. I think you need to do your worldwide one, but you got to give us one in the states too, because this is what this list is limited to. And it's it's very difficult for me, and I'm not thinking of everything. And if you throw Amelia Island and you throw Monterey in there, it makes it a little bit more difficult. But I'm going to narrow it down a little bit more. My vote would be for the Barrett Jackson collector car auctions, and it says multiple locations. No. Barrett Jackson collector car auctions, January, with all the other auctions going on with RM,
Scottsdale.
with Bond. Yeah, you want to go to the Scottsdale auctions. There's more to do in those 4 or 5 days than you will ever be able to do and be able to see. I think it would be an immersive experience. You could leave your hotel, go to an event, drop dead, take an Uber back to the hotel, get up in the morning, and all you would be is cars. There's nothing else on this list that's going to be nonstop cars 7 days, well, say 5 days in a row. And I even will venture to say that Monterey Car Weeks won't even offer you that. They offer you segmented little events. Scottsdale auction weeks, you make the plan, you write your ticket, you figure out where to go, and
And it's 18 hours a day.
and
It's
you
nonstop.
don't have to worry about anybody else. You're going to go to Bonhams in a night. You're going to go to RM in a night, and they do a really good job of trying not to overlap those two. Russo Steel's going to run for a few days. Barrett Jackson's going to run for a few days. Leakey's going to run for a few days. And I don't know who else is on the gambit out there, but that's 5 auctions. Probably, I mean, Barrett Jackson alone is going to run 2,000 cars. So you figure 3,000 cars, and anywhere from say $1,000, $3,000 to
Millions.
7 figures, 8 figures,
Millions. Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars.
This is going to sound really, really odd, especially to you, John. I think I agree. I think there are only a couple other things that may trump that for me, but I think in the grand scheme, it's really tough to beat Scottsdale Barrett. That entire week is amazing. If I have to keep it to North America, and I have to keep it to an event that is open to the public, then that Barrett week would definitely be the one. SEMA, obviously, if you are if you're in the vehicular industry or someone who is that can get you into SEMA, SEMA is pretty epic. You have to wade through a lot of the stuff that you don't care about to get to the stuff that you do. But the cool thing about SEMA is it's everything new for the next year. And no matter what you care about, whether it's lifted trucks or slam trucks or hot rods or race cars or neon and 30-inch wheels or, it doesn't matter. It's at SEMA. And SEMA is cool. But you have to be an industry insider or know someone to get you into that. So if we're going for open to the public, I'm going with Barrett. If you're an industry insider, go to SEMA. And if we're opening up to the whole world, I'm going to Ferrari World just because it's a dream. And it turns me into a 5-year-old just thinking about it. And I want to ride a roller coaster that goes 0 to 150 miles an hour in 4.9 seconds. That sounds like fun to me. Those are my picks.
I say there you have it. I know I talked a lot in this. I'm going to finish it up for everybody. No Driving Gloves, nodrivinggloves.com. Facebook, No Driving Gloves, No Driving Gloves Pod on Twitter. Otherwise, it's No Driving Gloves anywhere, Instagram and such. Give us a like, tell somebody about us. Share this podcast out to people. We're on a really big growth spurt now. We've got some great interviews in the books or in the can over the last 3 months.
Amazing.
I had a over the top guest offered to me today, and we're working on the scheduling of that one. we've got a couple, at least a half dozen or more guests scheduled. And it's amazing. Since we've added Sean to the mix here to help keep podcasts rolling and that, I'm scheduled and I'm booking people, telling them your podcast isn't going to air until late August. It's kind of a nice feeling. You
You're
guys have
fine with
helped.
that.
Yeah, all your listeners, you've helped with that. The more we're out there, the better the guests we get. Like I say, just we asked to share. We've been running some, kind of giving away some magnets and stickers and stuff on Facebook quite often now with little trivia questions. Have to listen to the podcast to know the answers, but give it a try. But that's going to be it. I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. If you're listening to this the week of the 15th, be sure to check out the Brian, the last 3 episodes, the Lane Motor Museum, Brian Fuller and Matt Farah. I mean, boom, boom, boom. You really can't knock it. Some pretty decent names.
Good things, and more to come.
And before that, if you're into the racing thing, we've got, what was that? Ben Keating, Randy Popes,
Bill Riley.
Yeah, Bill Riley.
Yeah, and there's definitely more to come motorsport wise. We have some pretty amazing stuff lined up.
Well, thank you for listening. Sean and I are out of here for the night. In tribute to Derek, Sean.
Zamboni.